In this lesson, we'll begin styling our landing page and we'll concentrate on the top part so that our navigation menu, instead of looking like this, actually looks like this. We need to start by setting up some defaults on the body of our page. Web browsers have some defaults that they assume that you'll want, but in the hypothetical case that the web browser doesn't have those same defaults, you might want to be more specific. For example, web browsers give you a white background by default, and they give you black font by default. We've never said we want our font to be black, but it's just what we're getting by default. So we are going to begin by selecting the body of our page and setting up some defaults so that we actually have made this explicit, and if it wasn't the default of the browser, it would still show the way we want. So we want those things. We also want the font size to be of 16 pixels, which is the default as well. And let's specify the font family. So I want my page to look Arial by default or Helvetica. And sans serif is another default that we can specify which different operating systems will fall back to different fonts if you specify this. So other things that I want to specify here, in case there's any sort of default padding in the body of my page, I want to get rid of it. So this actually doesn't change anything, but if there was some sort of default padding, we are getting rid of it. Also, I want to get rid of any default margin that there could be. And you'll see that this actually will make a difference. So see how everything was actually with, everything had some sort of margin. But now what about this part? Why isn't this part on the top? And I'll show you why. So we're going to use our inspect tool, and I'll show you that the UL element, the unordered list, actually has some default padding on its own. So we're gonna have to get rid of that as well. So that would be all for the body. And now let's concentrate on the actual nav area, which is the div that contains everything else. As you can see, that whole area here is of a different color and the font is white. So we can specify those things easily. Selecting the nav by class, and let's specify the background color. The specific color that we're using here is a color called cadet blue. And the font color should be white. So we are getting closer. Now let's concentrate on that UL element. How can we select that element? We don't want to select all the UL elements on the page. We could give this element a class, an ID. Another way to do it is by selecting the UL element that's inside the nav class. So this is another type of selection you can do, in which you enter the parent element, in this case nav, and then space and a sub element. So this means let's select all the UL elements that are inside of nav. What do we want to do with this, guys? We want to get rid of that padding, as I mentioned. And we're also going to get rid of the margin. So that top part was the margin that they have by default. And also, if we get rid of this for a second, I'll show you that there's this decoration of the text, and I don't want that anymore. I don't want the bullet points. So before we get rid of the margin of the padding, before we get rid of the padding, I actually also want to get rid of that, because even if we get rid of the padding, these things still exist. They're just not showing because they're way too much to the left. To get rid of that, there's a property called list style type, which has different options for these bullet points. And actually, I don't want any of them, so I'm setting that to none. And now I'm going to get rid of the padding, just because I know there's nothing there. Okay. So we're on the right track here. Let's now style the actual individual items. These are all the individual items. We want to style those now. We are getting closer, as you can see. We can follow the same approach to select those elements. We have the parent, then the child, and then the child of that element. the li elements are inside of ul, and ul is inside of nav. So we can select them in this manner, and this applies to all of them. Whatever we enter here will apply to all of them. So a few things. We do want to have a padding for these elements. That padding will be 16 pixels, because as you can see, they do have a padding. They do have separation from the border. So that gives us this. Then what else? We know that the text should be centered. So we can easily do that by using text align, center. So we are getting much closer. Now the font size is not the same, is it? We need to make it a little bit bigger. For that, we are going to use a font size property, and we'll use 1.2 rem. What does that mean? Root em, it means that this is the root element, the body. It's 16 pixels. So this will be 1.2 times 16 pixels. So it's basically 20% bigger than 16 pixels. And that gives us the right size. If you enter 2, it would be twice the size. It would be 32 pixels. So you can easily specify a number in this way so that it's relative. If we wanted to increase all the fonts, we would just have to change one number, and all the other elements would show with the same relation to that root element, if that makes sense. So what's the other thing that we want here? We want that border at the bottom of each element. Actually, it doesn't show at the top, as you can see. So we want that border at the bottom. That would be border bottom. It's 1 pixel, it's solid, and it's black. So there we go. We've got that menu going. And that should actually say services to be exactly the same. So the only thing that's missing is that nice transition effect, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. So besides selectors like this, there is something called pseudo selectors, which allow you to specify that you're selecting some element, but only with some particular property, or in some case. In this case, when we hover the mouse over an element, we want that effect. So what we need to do for that is actually select the same element, but specifying with colon hover. So only when this is hover, the background color should actually be black. So let's see what that gives us. So we can make them black like that, but if you've observed carefully, that's not exactly what we have here. There's a little bit of a transition going on. It's not a rough change of color like this. So we need to add a CSS transition. Basically, when we hover over an element, there's a transition being made of the two different colors, from blue cadet and to black, and the other way around as well. So in here we can specify a transition property, and we can specify what property is going to be changing. It will be the background color. How long is it going to take to change? What you can type, for example, 1 second, and you'll see it takes 1 second to change, which is a bit too slow for what we have here. But the change is not abrupt, it's actually soft. In this case, actually, this was set to a very low value of 0.2 seconds. So it's almost, you can almost not see it, but it gives it a bit of a better feel to it. So we've got our top menu working now. Just a quick summary of what we did. We specified some default properties for the body of our page. So this applies to the entire page. Some of these things are obvious, like the background color white, but I'll put you this example, like what if the browser you're using doesn't show white by default? You might want to set that and make it explicit. Same thing with the font, and we've set other things like font family. Now our navigation area has a background color and a color for the font. Then we've selected the UL element and gotten rid of all default styles. These are styles that the browser applies by default. The one that we got rid of are all things the browser does by default, thinking, oh, this is how people probably want to see this. But it's not our case, clearly. Then we've gone onto the individual list items and give them the corresponding properties, padding, alignment, size. And at last lastly, we looked at the hover effect, basically by selecting the hover state and giving it a different background color. And then with transition, just make the transitions, the change smooth, not just too abrupt.